Hello and welcome to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I am your host, Josh Carr, and of course, I'm joined by another wonderful, wonderful guest. With me today is Jenny Colgan. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Hi, Josh. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm very excited for this one. Because obviously I imagine a lot of people at home will know about your work, but of course you are an author and novelist and writer of many things, Doctor Who and non-Doctor Who. Um, so I mean, in terms of where to start, I always start at the very beginning. When it comes to Doctor Who, so where did Doctor Who start for you? Where did you become a fan?
Well, I think there's a cohort of us who are all exactly the same age. So Rob Shearman and I are the same age. Paul Cornell and I are the same age. And so we were kind of about eight in that massive Tom Baker kind of peak Tom period. So, excuse me, City of Death, Talons of Weng Chiang, Fang Rock, all of that was huge when we were about 8 or 9, which is a really formative, or even 7 or 8, I would say, such a
Mm.
formative age to watch something. And so, if you were going to watch something and really, really fall for it, that um, that was kind of fine. So I was that. So the first who I remember seeing was City of Death, was Paris, and the
Yeah.
clock. The guy when he's drawing Romana and he draws the clock face,
Hmm.
and that I just thought that was awesome. I was like, oh, okay, I'm color me in. And then the second thing was I was, well, like all writers really, I was a huge reader, huge. There's no way my parents could conceivably have kept up with the volume of reading that I did. And my mother took me to the library and they had a shelf full of targets, and I just devoured those. Literally, you could read them in about an hour, if you
Hmm.
were really going for it. So I was a big Target reader, and then BBC Two started to run. A couple of years later, they started to run the reruns on BBC Two about 6 o'clock in the evening of the earlier Doctors. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of origin of the obsession, really.
Yeah. I mean, a great era to start with. I can imagine, as you said, there's a group of people because I mean, City of Death as a first episode you remember is a great one. We've had some slightly ropey answers. Some people who are like have some of the more questionable episodes. But City of Death is a stone cold classic. So that's a great answer. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting you said about targets because um, we've we've had a couple of writers on, and it seems to be a recurring theme that with writers, they seem to be obsessed with the target novels as a kid. What was it about the targets that drew you in, do you think?
Well, I'm actually, obviously you had no way of seeing them, and the
Mm.
novels. I have no idea, by the way, to this day, what I've seen and what I've read. None.
Yeah.
And um, they were so much better. I had to review The Deadly Assassin recently for, I don't know, I was doing a thing, and I must have seen it. Had I seen it? Oh my goodness, it's rubbish compared. Well, it's not rubbish. It's a really good story, but in the Target episode, it's Gallifrey, these huge halls, these kind of 500 level lifts. It's so dramatic and enormous. And of course, you watch it, and it's six guys, huddling around a tiny
Yeah.
studio with like shiny curtains. So it gave your imagination the way to make up the budget in a way that they just couldn't do. So yeah, that's why. I mean, it really made the show fly when you had absolutely no access to
Yeah.
in any other way.
Yeah. So you could obviously like visualize things very well from the target novels.
Well, you can, and
Um,
also it was a really early kind of lesson in discretion, really, because like a lot of children that read a lot, I didn't really differentiate between authors. I just read what was there. I just thought the government kind of pumped out stories for children. And but I learned fairly early on that I liked Terence's and I liked Ian Martyr's. I liked, that there were certain writers I liked more than others. And that was a bit of a revelation as well, that, okay, some people do this better than some other people was, from a critical standpoint, it was interesting.
No, that's really interesting. So, I mean, is that where did writing start for you then? Was it around a similar time that you got? Obviously, you said that you were always a reader, but were you always interested in becoming a writer, or was it something that came later on?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but it's I didn't think it was necessarily more realistic than becoming a pop star or a gymnast, or it was one of these. I'm from a small town and a very normal background, and it didn't really occur to me that this would be something that they would let me do, from that perspective. But like most writers, writing's just the closest job to reading all day that you can find. That it's not quite the perfect job, which is reading all day, but it's second best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, because you a lot of again, another thing that I found is that a lot of Doctor Who writers have um have a big Doctor Who catalogue behind them of things they've written, and it's usually a big theme in their writing career, and then you get the odd thing here and there that they do that isn't related to Doctor Who. But you're quite different when I was looking through your published works, because you've got a lot of Doctor Who credits, and you've got works within the spin-offs and Big Finish, stuff like that, and then you've got completely separate works. Is it difficult to separate them, or do you sort of just see them all as it's writing, you put the same level of yourself into it each time? What's it like, the comparison between writing your own stuff and Doctor Who stuff?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the writing Doctor Who is my kind of side passion project. Really, it's not my job. My job is to write romantic comedy fiction, which kind of we sell all over the world, and it has a totally different. Which is why we put an extra initial letter when I'm writing Doctor Who. Otherwise, I get really upset at letters from Scandinavia and Brazil. But the process is kind of this is not no, it's not the same, is it? Because when I'm writing my day job, then the world is mine, and I can do what I want with it, and that it's all up to me. Whereas, of course, writing for Doctor Who, you have generations, literally now, of people that have been before you that make the rules, that tell you what you can and can't do, and that in itself is fun. And it also there's a bit of cognitive dissonance involved. I was at a party and Matt Smith was there, and I don't know him at all. And I'd been writing him all day. I was writing a Matt story, and it was the weirdest thing to think that's a person that just walks about in the world in a physical form that has nothing to do with me at all. So it's kind of trickier in that sense, but it's kind of more fun in another. I mean, every Doctor Who writer would say that if it's a show that you love, and it will be a show you love because you wouldn't do it for the money, to write, the TARDIS dematerialize for a show that has been so important to you is a massive thrill. I will tell you though, it's quite the first. What was the first? Oh, Dark Horizons was the first book I wrote, and at one point he jumps into the water to save someone, and he takes off his shoes and his trousers. And it came back from Albert at the BBC with just this line saying, "The Doctor does not remove his trousers," or their trousers, I should say. I like that. I like that there was a trouser removing rule of which I had been previously unacquainted.
I imagine there's some document in the BBC somewhere, some scroll that has all of these do's and do nots with the Doctor. I like to imagine that gets cross-referenced every now and again. But I don't know. I think the Doctor could chuck his trousers off if he's going for a swim.
Have you ever seen the Doctor take his trousers off, though? Have you? No, he'll appear in a spaceship suit, but he's got his trousers on underneath.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
trousers on then.
Rules
Trousers
are
on.
rules.
Yeah, them's the rules. Um, so I mean, so obviously you've written for a long time. I'm interested in how obviously you said it was like a side passion project for you, writing for Doctor Who. Um, so how did it come about? Was it just a case that you had started writing Doctor Who for fun, or were you approached by, I imagine it would have been BBC Books, or how did it come about that your Doctor Who ideas were going to get published?
Yeah, in a fairly kind of media kind of, oh God, I bet it works like that kind of way. Which I will tell you is when I was starting out, I was working for the hospital, a hospital in Luton, and I applied to agents. That's how I got my writing career. So I got my
Mhm.
writing career from the slush pile, from a very basic standing start. I didn't know anybody in publishing. But when it came to Doctor Who, I think I'd published 15 or 20 books. And Naomi Alderman wrote a book for BBC Books, and Naomi's a friend of mine and a brilliant, brilliant writer. And of course, she's now written The Power, which is about to become a huge Netflix sensation.
Mhm.
And so I spoke to Naomi, and then I found, and then I spoke to somebody I knew at publishers, and I said, please, can I write one? And they were very skeptical, actually. We had a very nice breakfast, and they're all very nice people. And but they, they were convinced that I was going to kind of make it romantic and put, kind of snogging in it. And I was like, I'm not, I really am not. I had to convince them. It was like, what are the 3 laws of robotics? There was a bit of a science fiction questionnaire.
Yeah.
And so I had to convince them of my kind of credentials that I was capable of doing it in a way I couldn't write a Blake Seven spin-off, for example, even though I love that show too. And
Mhm.
and so it was kind of very much on the understanding that there wouldn't be any kind of romance. Whereupon, literally, Matt Smith got naked or married about 19 times in the show. After that, nothing to do with me at all. So I had to be kind of terribly chaste about it, and then they did all sorts of.
Mhm.
So yeah, so it was kind of I begged them really. I just really really wanted to do it, and then I pitched and I pitched and I pitched, and after that I kept on pitching until they let me do another one, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it must be. I say this to every writer because I just know. Obviously, I don't know the mindset of a writer, but I know the mindset of a fan. And I just think, how exciting it must have been to be able to have published Doctor Who works with your name on. Um, was it scary at all?
Do you
Were
know?
you a bit nervous?
But I'm not things. I think if I'd been a little younger, it would have bothered me a little more.
Mm.
I'm not going to go and look at Gallifrey Base. I'm not going to go and Google search my name to see what people have been saying about me. So to a certain extent, actually, not really. It was just like, yeah, it's not going to be how other people necessarily think it should have been done, but you can't let that. I would say Big Finish was very frightening. Yes, Big Finish was scary.
Yeah.
But as for the books, no, I completely. They may not be. Um, oh, you never finish a book that's exactly how you want it to be. But no, I was perfectly confident that I could write a book, I could finish it, I could tell a Doctor Who story.
Hmm.
Whereas Big Finish was quite nerve wracking.
Yeah. What was it like taking that step? Because it's a very different medium to writing a book.
It is a very
The Big
different medium,
Finish
and I think
world.
in retrospect, writing my first ever script for David Tennant and Catherine Tate was fairly. I mean, obviously you have to kind of say yes to these kind of things because who knows, what life will offer you. But yeah, it
Mhm.
was more difficult in retrospect than I realised. And I look at people who I think are extremely good at it, like James Goss, and I'm really impressed by. It's just an exceptional talent that I think that he has, but I find it very difficult, and I
Yeah.
don't do it anymore. I just I just find it so hard and so embarrassing that I just thought, no, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Right. Okay. So you wouldn't go back to writing scripts again
No,
in the
you know
future.
what? There's no point in doing something that is always going to be disappointing. And the actors are brilliant, but it's just, I've spent my life reading books and writing books. That's what I do. And what
Hmm.
writing screenplays and writing radio plays, which is even more difficult because you can't see anything, is just not worth the grief. They were very nice, and they offered me all kind of sorts of stuff, and I thought, I found myself looking at a Class reboot, and I thought, I just can't do this. I just can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so do you know what? I was part of the first ever Modern Doctor Big Finish range, and that for me is a lovely tick, and that is it.
Yeah.
Now I
That's cool.
I don't
That's
want to
cool.
do anything else.
So I mean, the impossible question really then is, so if the if the show came knocking for a TV episode, what would your thoughts be about writing
Well,
that?
the thing is, I would really need to have a brilliant idea that I love, who hadn't done before, and that it was completely. And even with that, I would need so much help. And I've seen people do brilliantly, coming in from novelists, and I've seen things not go so well. So they seem to be they seem to be managing perfectly well without me. So yeah, it's not something that I give a lot of thought to really. I can't. I
Hmm.
have to tell you, when Russell and Stephen brought the show back, it was such a big deal to me. It was everything to me. The
Yeah.
show, everything to me around Legopolis. Tom Baker was my doctor, and Peter Davison. Peter Davison was very much my doctor, and the show was really part of my heart, my mind, my life, and I loved it. And then when Colin Baker came along, I kind of fell off, and it just wasn't. I just didn't like it as much. And I know
Mhm.
there's lots of amazing things to be said about those doctors and Paul McGann and all the rest of it, but it wasn't as much for me. And I've kind of, for me, where Chris Eccleston's Doctor David, I just loved it. I loved it. I just
Mhm.
had a baby, so I had a very young family at home, and was just completely obsessed with it. And then I'm kind of, that's my era again, is kind of 9, 10, 11, and I'm slightly falling off a bit now.
Okay.
I'm so sorry I came on your fan podcast and said that.
No, that's fine. That's okay. That's what it's all about. Because, well, I mean, it's. I always think that being a fan is, you take the good and the bad. It's not a case that you have to be obsessed with every single aspect of the thing, because, like, I've spoken on the podcast before, like love Jodie's era. Not everything's for me in there. Um,
That's all right.
same with Matt's era.
Yeah.
It's like um, everyone's got their different opinions.
I have to say, I loved it. I love, oh my goodness, some of the Jodie episodes have been absolutely sensational. I can't even remember what the one with the big frog is at the end, but I just,
Oh, it takes you away.
oh,
Yeah,
I thought it
I
was a
love
good
that.
thing. Who has ever done? I love the haunting of Villa Diodati.
Mm.
I've really enjoyed those episodes. Really enjoyed it. It's a great show. I'm not obsessed with it in the way that I
Yeah.
was in 1981 or
Hmm.
2009. That kind of thing. That kind of just loving it so, so much. I still really like it. I still never miss an episode. I've still seen every single episode. But I don't have that level of obsession, I think, that is required to
Hmm.
kind of sustain a kind
Yeah.
of constant presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's cool that the show coming back sort of brought everything back for you. 'Cause I'm part of the era where it was that was the start for me. Um, so I feel very passionately about you know Chris and David and that era. That's definitely my era. It's filled with nostalgia. Um, and one particular episode, which I've spoken about on the podcast before, which is I can safely say my ultimate Doctor Who comfort episode. Just any day, any weather, I can stick it on and just watch it all over again and be transported back. Is the Christmas Invasion. So it's obviously a story that is very closely linked to you, because you wrote. I actually have it right in front of me. For the listeners at home, I'm holding it up. I have your Target novelisation of it, which I've been rereading. Um, Where how did that come about? Was Target something that obviously you've spoken before about how you love Target novels? And again, I had a very similar conversation with Rob Shearman about it, where he said he was obsessed with the Target novels, and writing a Target novel was sort of the
Oh,
peak of the
well, see,
pyramid for
that's the
him.
other reason. I kind of feel like I've done last month's Doctor Who Monthly came with a free Target novel cover poster of
Hmm.
all the Target novels ever published, and I'm on it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's it. There is literally nothing else I need to do. I was so excited. I agree with you. I think it's a fabulous, There's often a lot of very good introductory episodes. Matt's is also fantastically good.
Hmm.
The Christmas Invasion, it's such a high bar. The brilliant thing is, nobody remembers this now, but he was considered very odd casting because
Mm.
so young and kind of gawky. And I remember discussing it with someone and who's like, oh, he's not even going to do his accent. He's not even going to sound like he sounds. I should actually, as a quick aside, when I did the big finish, which was for David, and our local, he's from Paisley and I'm from Ayr, which is just down the road, and
Hmm.
the local paper ran it as a news story, and the headline they had on it was "Presswick Girl Writes for Paisley Boy," which I thought was very charming. Um,
That's lovely. Yeah.
but there was quite a lot of doubt. But of course, Russell was so confident, and he knew exactly what he had, and he knew exactly how good the casting is. So you don't even see him for 30 is an hour, isn't it? So you don't even see him for like
Yeah.
5 minutes. It's brilliant. It's so confident. It's so fun. It's so clever. And actually, the spookiness of the people standing on the buildings, as long as you've got a budget for extras, it's very simple and very frightening.
Mm.
So yes, I loved everything about it, and I was beside myself when they asked me. It was brilliant. I kept offering Russell and Stephen like totally unsolicited novel advice. This is how you write a novel. You just have
Yeah.
it, and that's it.
So did they approach you with an episode, or did they approach you with like a list of potential episodes, or
No,
was
no, no,
it
no, they offered me an episode.
they offered you
Yeah.
the Christmas Invasion?
Yes.
Um, so I mean, yeah, I just as a side point, I loved
They could
it.
have offered me Love and Monsters and I would have gone for it. Sorry, no
Yeah,
offense to Love and Monsters fans, but do you know what I mean? There's nothing that I wouldn't have done.
yeah.
It was such an extraordinary, amazing opportunity. I'm still delighted.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I absolutely love it, because, like I said, it's an episode that's very very close to my heart, and it's probably, I'd say, the episode that I've seen the most. I probably know this episode. I know it like the back of my hand. I just sit, and it's one of those episodes where you just talk along with it. When you
I'm
just
like that
sat,
with Silence in the Library. There's not a single
yeah,
thing that I don't know.
yeah. So yeah, reading this, um, it's just spot on. And I just, again, it has the same effect that the episode has on me, where I'm
Oh,
sat on the floor in front of the telly on Christmas Day, and everyone's been banished from the room, and I'm just in that episode. Um, yeah, has the exact same effect.
nice.
I love it. Um, and I think as well, this is just something that I've thought about while we're talking. As you said, you've written a lot of romantic comedies. I think that is, uh, you know, perfect for this era. Essentially, I think it's a sort of the vibe that a lot of that early David and Rose stuff goes for. With the intergalactic space dates and stuff like that. Um, did you bring a bit of that in consciously, or?
Actually, not really. Because normally they ask me to write Catherine,
Mhm.
to write Donna. And also you get into a rhythm of writing for people where you're used to writing for them, so you can access their voices quite easily. So I tend to write for Donna quite a lot, and I love their kind of screwball relationship. I could listen to
Mm.
those two just rattle at it round the TARDIS for hours. In fact, I always put in loads of that stuff and they always take it out again, even though it was when I was a child. Watching people in the TARDIS was to me extremely interesting. I always liked
Yeah.
seeing their bedrooms were, that kind of thing. So no, although I'll tell you what's interesting is I've been watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer with my children over lockdown. And what's very interesting is there's an awful lot of Buffy and Angel, I think, in that Rose Doctor relationship. Now I'm looking, or, I keep seeing bits where I'm like, oh goodness, of course you could see why this, was a good idea or was an interesting thing to do, which came along. So no, not deliberately. What I'm always trying to get though, and what I think that era did, is it wasn't pretentious, it was light and it was funny, and if you think of something like the Unicorn, the Wasp, and how just adorable, it's generally adorable. And I find that my lesser favorite kind of Who stuff is when we get deep into backstory and history and context, and that goes for any show. I'm not really interested in why somebody's family background made them into what they are. I'm interested in a really great adventure with a lot of excitement, and I feel sometimes with the earlier shows that if something is poignant, it kind of earns it. I think you have to earn a few tears in your story. I don't think you can say, right, every single story is going to be a little bit sad and so on. So no, actually, not until kind of the last. They asked me to write what happened after Parting of the Ways story.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's to the half doctor that was left behind, and I was like, well, to me, it's patently obvious what happened with the half doctor that was left behind. They just got it on. Anyway, that went down. It doesn't bother me in the slightest that people didn't like it very much. It's just astonishing to me that people thought that anything else would happen. Of course she's pregnant. She's immediately pregnant. What did you think they were going to do? So I wrote that, and I had enormous fun. And I emailed a friend. I won't. And I said, you won't believe what I've done. They're just like pregnant and everything. And he's like, are you kidding? You're going to get drummed out forever. And I was like, that's fine. Perfectly happy to leave on a high note. And I told Russell not to read it, and he read it in. So that's the only time I think I've gone very full romantic. I think Rose, there's a story I wrote in an anthology set in Rose discovers a window in a skyscraper that's looking into a different time, into pre-revolutionary Russia. The obvious kind of beat was to set it in New York, where there's a lot of skyscrapers, but you're not allowed to set stories in New York anymore because there's too many, and because Matt's doctor has enormous trouble going anywhere near. It was Chris's doctor, but anyway, there's all sorts of problems going back to New York. So for kind of terrible reasons, it's set in Toronto, a city with which I'm completely unfamiliar.
Oh, I love Toronto. I am very closely linked to Toronto.
But, I'm not sure. I think
it was
quite do it justice. But there's a romance for Rose in that. But on the whole, no, I think it's not, apart from the last one, which is full on, because that was the brief. What happened to Rose and the Half Doctor was the brief. But apart from that, no, I tend to avoid too much TARDIS spaced hanky panky. I'm not a fan.
Yes, that's an old John Nathan Turner line, isn't it? No hanky panky in the TARDIS. But one thing as well, just that I'm intrigued about with the Target novel, was because obviously I'd spoken to. I keep referring back to it. It's just it's a nice parallel. With Rob Shearman, obviously he's just released his of Dalek.
That was brilliant.
He wrote.
He's a wonderful writer, Rob.
He's great. Yeah, he's a lovely fella, and great novelisation. But obviously that was his episode, and you're coming at it from the other side, because you get this writers coming back to write their own episodes, and then you get writers coming in to write novelizations of other people's episodes. Were you quite closely involved with Russell in the process of making it? Did you chat to Russell, or was it a case of, I'm just gonna do my Christmas Invasion?
What I did was, he very kindly sent me every version of the script that he had, so that some bits are from some drafts, some bits are in that did not make it. But I do bother Russell all the time, but it tends to be for different things, like if I'm having trouble moving Chris about, for example, or just certain bits and bobs. But for that, he just didn't. The script is so good; it's all there on the page. He's so brilliant. Every bit of motivation, every bit of kind of thought passing behind the character's eyes is very, very clear. So actually, no, I really didn't have to, because it's all there in his brilliant, brilliant writing. It was useful for me to have every version, or as many as could be dug out, to add in things here and there. And like Jackie's got a kind of boyfriend thing going on, which had kind of bypassed me the first time. But yeah, no, and of all the times that I've kind of looked for advice from Russell, I really didn't need it then, because it was the one thing I wish I'd done, and I really, when I read Paul's, is I had forgotten, because I'm assuming, and quite rightly, I think that nobody would pick it up unless they were already a fan and they were aware of it. Whereas, of course, in the past, that wasn't necessarily the case, because it wasn't on TV. And therefore, all the original Target books explain on page 1, this is the Doctor. He travels in time and space in a police box. And I wish I'd done that. I start with how you would normally start, a kind of pre-credit inciting event. And, that's how it starts. But actually, I wish I'd done the traditional, he's your brief description of your Doctor, and and he has a police box, and he's from Gallifrey, and he travels in time and space. And I wish I'd done that entry level proper. Paul does it, that proper entry level welcome, children who have never seen an episode of Doctor Who before. So I've done that in retrospect.
Well, I love the Target book. I'm quite new to the Target books. This and Dalek are pretty much the first two that I've properly sat down and read.
Have you not read Stevens? Oh, you should almost certainly.
Yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant. But off the spot,
next on my list is Stevens. But yeah, I love the way they look as well. They're just they're just so beautiful, and I love how they look when they get tatty as well. Everyone was shouting at me on Twitter for not keeping my Target books in pristine condition.
I know. I think they put the down the spine. I think they put the logo slightly out of whack on a couple. Everybody went a bit spare about it. But the fun about this project has been how much fun the publishers have also had. It's been fun for absolutely everyone, because they did such a beautiful job of it. And they just treated it with such kind of loving care, which is nice. You're reminding me I have to frame the poster. It's so cool.
Yeah. Well, if anyone hasn't read it, I would strongly recommend that they do, because, like I said, it's an episode that gets mixed reactions from fans, from what I gather. I adore it. Yeah.
You know what? Maybe they weren't there. Maybe they've come to it later. You had to be watching it on Christmas Day, very worried about a new Doctor and about this, successful, but nonetheless still very, very new thing on the BBC, that was about to go absolutely crazy. I think, maybe you just had to be there.
I agree, because like that's, again, just to come back to it, when I read this and when I watch the episode, I am literally just a child again, watching, sat up, staring up at the TV, watching David Tennant step out of the TARDIS for the first time, and it's just absolutely.
Don't worry, it's all gonna be fine.
It's all fine.
Everything's great. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we're going to take a very brief break here, but when we come back, we've got a couple of things to chat about. We've got some questions from Twitter, and of course, we've got the DVD collection. Welcome back to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I am still your host, Josh Carr, and I'm still with Jenny Colgan. And of course, we've got a little matter to attend to. which is what Jenny is going to select to go in the DVD collection.
By the power of Grayskull.
The Unicorn and the Wasp or Love and Monsters?
Which one do you think I'll prefer?
No, I mean, which one do you want to watch first?
You are pulling my leg.
So, I love this part. I love hearing people chat about their favourite episodes and their quintessential Doctor Who stories. So, what is yours? What are you going to put in the DVD collection?
Well, we were kind of, thinking about this, and would it be old Who or new Who? And I think it's going to be old Who because it just kind of settles so deep when you're younger and when you're a child. So I am putting Kinda, the most terrifying and weird and extraordinary, and for its time, extraordinarily good special effects, believe it or not, apart from the snake. I'm putting Kinda in because Kinda absolutely had a deep and profound effect on me, and was actually a possibly far more adult show than should have been shown at 6:25 on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Which is when they were showing it in those days, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, I love Kinda, and because I watched Doctor Who, classic Doctor Who, all the way through during lockdown for the first time, and it absolutely blew me away. I was watching it, I was like, this is because not only has it got that Doctor Who fun, it's got it's got a cool monster, it's got Peter Davison doing what he does best, but it's got some really highbrow like themes in there, with the whole thing with Tegan, when she's in the dream place thing. It's really dark. It's really, really dark. Especially for that, era of Doctor Who. You look at things like Warrior's Gate as well, which is a bit weird and trippy. And they really push the boat out with it. So are you? I know you mentioned before, so you're a big Peter Davison fan, I imagine. Is that the case?
When just after Tom Baker left, and Logopolis was a massive deal for me. Although actually Logopolis, from the amount of times you get pictures and unpublished work where a TARDIS sees another TARDIS, I think Logopolis has a very long arm really of influence on people. I entered a competition at W.H. Smith's, or John Menzies as it was in those days, had a competition to meet Doctor Who, and I entered it, and I won it. As did famously David Tennant also entered it and didn't win.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're about the same age. Yeah. And everyone I meet now in Who, Pete Harness entered it, and everyone that I've ever worked with subsequently entered the Doctor Who competition of about 1981 to meet Doctor Who, and I won it. So by the time they organised the prize, it had gone from Tom Baker to Peter Davison, and I had gone from primary school to secondary school, which was awkward. Because these days it would be quite a cool thing to do, to win a prize to go to London to meet Doctor Who, but then it really absolutely was not. And I was kind of pre-internet. You kind of felt like the only female Doctor Who fan on air. Although my mother was distinctly happy that it was the handsome young vet from All Creatures Great and Small, Tom Baker. So Kinda came between those two things, me winning it and me going. So I was particularly obsessive, I think, that year about the show. But the amazing thing about Kinda is that the show is it's not predictable because you don't know where you're going to be, but you kind of know what's going to happen. There's going to be a scary thing. The Doctor will get captured. One of the, certainly then, because they had to do all these episodes, one of the companions will get into danger. There'll be a monster. There'll be Whereas the thing about Kinders, it's not remotely predictable. You don't know whether the people on the planet are good or evil. The adults behave in very upsetting ways. They regress to childhood, or they become, under this power. And then, of course, the Tegan situation, where she's taken over by this evil kind of imp, new romantic imp, is exceptionally frightening. I find the whole thing extremely frightening. And extremely visually new, in the early 80s. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what it was telling me. And it's interesting now where people say, oh, well, the plot is a bit all over the place. Well, yeah, but that kind of plays to its strengths, really, of putting you extremely off balance. It's still the one that frightened me most notably. Although it was interesting when I was showing Old Who to my children. Oh, and Fang Rock frightened me quite substantially. Whereas Warrior's Gate was very trippy but beautiful. And I still, my childhood head has a real confluence between Warrior's Gate and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the C.S. Lewis book. I think they have a lot of there's a sadness and a beauty to Warrior's Gate, whereas Kindred's just really scary. The children found the Talons of Weng Chiang too frightening to watch. It's the only time I've had to put. As soon as the blood started coming out the dummy, they were out of it. So yeah, for all of those reasons, and also I'm very frightened of snakes. I've always been extremely frightened of snakes, and I can't really watch them on television, not even the crappy version. Although actually the snake is even the least frightening thing in it. Everything that is frightening to a child, adults in positions of responsibility behaving in very, very strange ways, and Tegan's really, really scary dream made an absolutely lasting impression on me. And I'm constantly surprised whenever I'm asked, what creature would you bring back? I'm always amazed that I'm not that fussed about the Silurians, but I am absolutely astounded that they haven't brought the Mara back yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this yet again. I apologise because I keep bringing it back to the Rob Shearman episode, but I feel like I have to because we had almost the exact opposite conversation because Rob put snake dancing.
Was it Rob that put snake dancing?
Yeah, Rob put snake dancing. So we've now got Kinder and snake dance. And we were discussing this because I was saying that I would love the Mara to come back, and he had reservations about them coming back. I think because he adored the Mara so much, and he didn't want to taint that legacy for him. But I just think they're made for New Who. I think there's a story pretty much just ready to go there, where early on in a new Companions run, you get to delve deeper into that companion in the way that we did with Tegan. I think it's a great story. It really, really is. And you mentioned there as well, showing it to showing classic Who to your kids. I don't have children, but the nearest equivalent I have is a sci-fi hating girlfriend. Who people on the show who listen to the show will know she has a few episodes of Doctor Who she very much loves.
Does she like Blink? People that don't like sci-fi always like Blink.
She didn't mind it. She's got weird. She loves historicals. That she's like, just don't give me all this stupid alien nonsense. She just wants nice. So she loves like the Unquiet Dead. She loves the Empty Children, Doctor Dances. But yeah, and then she has like weird ones that she loves. Midnight. But yeah, Midnight
is one of the ones that gets better every single time I see it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I think to begin with, I think because Silence of the Library literally knocked me. If I was doing New Who, it would be Silence in the Library. I think it's absolutely startling piece of art. I would say it's that good. And of course, that comes straight after it. So I was a bit like, I was still so emotionally exhausted and traumatized. I wasn't very interested. And seeing it subsequently, you realise what a brilliant piece of work it is.
Yeah, well, that's a great era of Who as well. She loves Silence in the Library as well. But yeah, that's that run from Silence in the
Oh,
Library to this
what
finale.
I always think
Yeah.
of it as Lennon and McCartney, Russell and Stephen. It's just
Yeah,
absolutely startling. Yeah.
it's fondly referred to. I believe Mr. TARDIS, who's a Doctor Who YouTuber who has been on the podcast. I've heard him talk about it in videos, and I adopt the same term where he just calls it the run because
Run.
it's the run. It is the best run of
Anything,
not just
yeah.
Doctor Who. Yeah, it's probably one of the best runs of British TV ever. But yeah, when I was watching Classic Who, my girlfriend Jess would often dip in the room, look at the screen, and in no uncertain terms be like, "What the f are you watching? What are you watching?" And then she dipped in when I was watching Kinder, and she was like, "What? No!"
Yeah.
Like every she'd seen so many things, and she's like, "That looks rubbish. That looks dreadful. That looks awful. What are those special effects?" And then she saw Kinder, just like 5 minutes of it, and yeah, it freaked her out. She's like, "No, get off the screen. I don't like this."
It is. It's
So
very,
yeah, it's really frightening. But yeah, great pick. Absolutely love that pick. And it's in the DVD collection, immortalized on the metaphorical shelf forever. So yeah, that's wonderful. And to go from one scary place to another, we're gonna go over to a wretched hive of scum and villainy, which is Twitter, for the bloody Twitter section.
For God's sake! Bloody Twitter!
So every single week I get listeners to send in their questions for our guest via Twitter, and we've got loads this week. We've got loads of questions. So I'm sorry if we don't get around to yours. But yeah, we had a lot of love for you, and a lot of love for you coming on the podcast, which is great. So question number one is from @Oscar Groucho's, friend of the podcast. He has said, "What elements do you think make a quintessential Doctor Who story?" He's also said, "PS, loved your Christmas Invasion target. Great work."
Thank you. That's very sweet. Well, that's a really good question, because a few years ago, I would have said, a good rollicking adventure that gives us a little bit of more insight into how the Doctor works. So something like Gridlock, for example, is a good quintessential story, because it's a good story. It's an interesting world. It's an interesting problem. It's a real problem. And at the end of it, what do? We meet the face of Bo, and he starts to tell Martha, I think, about a little bit about Gallifrey, but we're not privy to it. However, so I also think you can have a bit much of that, and I think I'm less interested these days in kind of the Doctor's kind of past life psychodrama. I think you can go a little far with that. So that is what I would have said. Now I would say make me laugh and surprise me. Surprise me with something that is just done so cleverly. So, for example, the Villa, I'm thinking of recent ones that I've really liked. Villa Diodati was really fun.
Yeah.
It was beautifully done, like a farce. It had some wonderful haunted house elements, like the steps they can't get up, and some really it was paced really fast, and I enjoyed. And then it had that lovely sting at the end where Graham, who is, I know he's a very popular character, but unfortunately not with me, where they solve everything except for Graham's ghost, and that nobody else saw. So it's full of lovely moments, all of which I enjoyed. Or the one we mentioned earlier with the big frog at the end.
It takes you away. Yeah, I love that. I love that episode. Again, another one that I think, because of the weirdness of the frog, sometimes gets an unfair rap from me. I think, what is more Doctor Who than a sentient universe that is a frog on a chair? It with the voice of a a companion, a short-lived companion who died earlier on in the series. That's the most Doctor Who thing I've ever heard. It's so Doctor Who, but I
Yes.
thought they would never do it because it's too Doctor Who.
There you go. I mean,
But
this is prime time TV. I mean, it was just.
yeah.
Oh, I will tell you a funny story, which is which we know, but I had to, even though they'd done it on TV, I wanted to expand it a little. When we did the Christmas Invasion, was having Arthur Dent in it, and this very clear understanding that they live in the same universe. And I had to track down who handles, and after an author dies, their body of work is called their estate, and they will have an agent who handles their estate. So just a literary agent who handles live authors will also often handle dead authors. Excuse me, I'm just going to drink some water. Anyway, I had to Google Douglas Adams estate agent. Let me tell you, that's an impossible Google. You get 50,000 hits for Hot Black Desi Atom and nothing else at all. So I had a real time tracking down the estate, but it was, oh my goodness, that was a thrill, saying, hi, I'm emailing on behalf of Doctor Who, and we would like to use Arthur Dent. And of course they said, that's not a problem, we'd be delighted. And obviously it wasn't my idea because it's in the original script, but I expanded it a little, and that was a real thrill, thinking, I did that. And so that was, but yeah, so they're both living in a kind of slightly absurd universe, and I like that.
Yeah, because I've heard you talk about Douglas Adams before, on I believe in another interview. He just gets it, doesn't he? He just some of these people, some people out there, for me, just understand Doctor Who, like Russell, Stephen, they get it.
Oh yeah, it's just
it's just a natural thing. You put them in a room, and within an hour they could probably get, even with no editing or anything, they could get a script together that could be released tomorrow because they just understand that character.
You get it in like a year and a half. It'd be brilliant. It'd be very, very late.
Yes.
But yeah, no, he absolutely had it in his bones. So that sense of the absurd, I don't like it when it gets too po-faced. I have a real issue when, and I understand this because I've written so many, it is very difficult to find new and interesting ways for the Doctor to solve things without, hitting anyone with a gun. It's very difficult to find new ways of not solving everything with a screwdriver or the TARDIS. I get it that it's difficult. However, I have a strong dislike for any time where the Doctor trades on their reputation for getting out of trouble.
Yeah. Well, the next question is from Cal, another friend of the show, at generic_tweeting. He said, there's two questions here that are, I imagine, quite tough. What would you say is your favourite Doctor Who book that wasn't written by yourself?
Oh, the Doctor Who Celebration, the Peter Haining. It's the 25th anniversary book, and it has potted histories of every episode. It has loads of big colour photographs on it. Even the cover, which is a TARDIS with the door open with balloons coming out. I read that book till it fell apart. I could recite you every single word. Right in the middle colour section, there's a wonderful big picture of Tegan saying to the Doctor, even a broken clock's right twice a day. And Tom Baker saying, well, I'm a Time Lord, I walk in eternity. And it's just full of happy memories for me. So that's the book that I absolutely treasured.
That's lovely. He's also asked, on the other hand, what is your favourite Doctor Who book that you have written?
I think by far the best thing that I've written is the Picnic at Asgard. And I was so anxious to do it, and I must have asked Stephen, and then I pitched it because the other two had been done, I think. So when she goes through that book in Silence of the Library, and she says, have we done such and such, have we done such and such? And they had done them. The Singing Towers of Darillium they'd done. And something else they'd done. And I was like, I want Picnic at Asgard. Please, can I have Picnic at Asgard? And for whatever, God knows why, they did let me do it. And I love it. It's a theme park. It's a world theme park based on old gods. And of course, everything goes horribly wrong. But it's got a good river escape scene. It's just I like to write really big canvases, really huge things. That's why I set a lot of stuff on water, because it's so formidably expensive to film on that they don't do a lot of stuff on water. It's just really pricey. So I have a lot of kind of seafaring stuff always. It has the parks run by these little aliens who are all called after Roman centurions. There's nothing about it. So they're all called like Posthumus Agrippa and stuff like that. There's nothing about it I don't like. It is my absolute favourite. I can't even remember where it appears. It's Matt's Doctor and River. I've had more fan art based on that story than anything else.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And yes, that's my. Oh, and also I'll tell you the really nice. Oh, no, it's not from that. It's from something else. But I remember being very pleased. Is one river thing that I wrote. She has a sonic trowel, and then in the Singing Terrors of Beryllium, she also has her sonic trowel, because when you write, just become part of the kind of universe. And everyone's, people that know me were just like, there's a sonic trowel in the Christmas edition. And I think it's Peter Capaldi's Doctor, and he literally says, what's that? And she said, this is my sonic trowel. And he says, it's rubbish. That's my Who claim to fame, is my unnecessary sonic trowel. Anyway, so yes, that's the one I like. And I love the fact that whenever I watch Silence in the Library and she says, have you done Picnic at Asgard? Have we done Picnic at Asgard? Picnic on Asgard is me. And always. That's my favourite.
That's so cool, because it's so cool that you've been able to like retrospectively link yourself into that episode that you love so much. There's
never any harm in asking.
yeah, love that.
It's
love
one
it.
lesson in life.
Yeah. Well, speaking of lessons in life, Dom at Shed Life Skills with a Z has asked, what are the best and worst pieces of advice you've received?
What, for writing for who, or in general?
In general, I think. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say if you're writing or you want to write, then you have to get rid of whatever the voice inside you is that tells you that your mother won't like it, or that you shouldn't be doing it, or someone else should be doing it. That's not very helpful. Or really caring, really, what other people think of you. And it's hard to not do that. To do that, what I mean. Well, anyway, for example, I never read any reviews. I don't read professional reviews of my work. I don't read Google reviews. I don't Google myself. Because you can't, if you like that, if you want to spend your whole day with people saying, oh, why would they do this, then you'll never get anything done. I don't know. I know some writers read the reviews, but I just don't know how they can manage it. Even when people at me into it and say, oh, look at this great review, I'm not reading that. Or when I look at my Amazon for my other books, when I look to see on Amazon how they're doing on the chart, I will literally hold my hand up rather than read anything. You've got to do it regardless, because you know what? Some folk aren't going to like it. Some folk aren't going to like it. That's that, and now they can tell you in 2 seconds. Well, you've got to get that out of your head, because otherwise it's just horrible. It's just pointless. So get away from what other people think about you is good advice. I would say the bad advice is people get very prescriptive about writing. They're like, well, you must sit in a quiet room and you must have uninterrupted time, and you must, I think there's people, or you must do all your research. That's nonsense. I mean, it's just nonsense. And the research comes after you've written your story, not before. And I think people put these real barriers up to how you're supposed to be a proper writer. And the people that say these kinds of things tend to be people that run courses in creative writing. They don't tend to be actual writers. You can write wherever you want. You can write on a train. You can write in front of your kids. You can write in bed. It doesn't matter. Get your story down and worry about everything else after, I would say. The worst advice is thinking that you need conditions or qualifications to do this job, and you don't need either of those things. You need a bit of luck, but mostly you just need perseverance. I mean, I had 15 20 maybe best-selling novels, not just novels that had been on the Sunday Times list. And I still had to constantly pitch, and get turned down all the time before they'd let me do it. And that it doesn't change. It doesn't get any less of a hustle ever.
Yeah.
So basically,
No, that's lovely. That's great advice. Because I'm like that. I'm starting to try and write stuff at the minute. And yeah, I tried like you said, like everyone always tells you, just sit at a desk and no distractions. And I tried that, and I just couldn't get anything down. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to sit in bed and watch telly and just type away at the same time, and that just works so much better for me. And I like having something creative on to not nick stuff from, but spark little ideas that you might think, when you're stuck, something you see just goes, oh, that's a way you could get around it. But yeah, that's really cool. Another question is from my wonderful co-host on our spin-off podcast, the Collector's Edition. Everyone at home, if you haven't listened to it, it's available now wherever you get your podcasts and YouTube and all of that. It's Tom Vance at Tom Vance _. He's asked a few questions, but one in particular I wanted to ask. He said, your Christmas Invasion novelisation was a joy to read.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
But if BBC Books asked you back for another target, which episode would you love to adapt?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think they're kind of getting around all sorts of different people for different perspectives.
Yeah.
I did say to them, it would, unless Stephen wants to do it, obviously, it would break my heart if someone else got the Silence in the Library. It would really, I'd find it very, very difficult. And there's tons of really, really talented writers that would make a fantastic job of it. But I am, yeah, they are well aware of my thoughts on the matter. So I would absolutely I would love to do it. I think it's absolutely fantastically good.
Yeah.
So that's what I would like. But I think, I don't quite know what they've got on their agenda. So.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to read it. I'd love to read The Silence in the Library and novelised by Jenny Colgan. That would be great. And here's a Sam. Sam is a great artist on Twitter at CyberPlanner1. I've genuinely just this morning bought one of his prints. So everybody go check him out. He's asked a great question. It's quite long. Which do you like more, coffee or aeroplanes? And if you had to eradicate one from all of human existence, what would it be and why? And there's no loopholes. He said the Time Lords aren't around to protect the web of time anymore because they've gone and died again. So you must live with the consequences.
I like coffee, but it's kind of random. I'm sure there's all sorts of things that I could drink instead. So I think I will keep an airplane. Thank you. I think I'm really fond of traveling. I'm really fond of seeing other things. I realise it's not environmentally a brilliant thing to like. However, I don't know. I suppose we could have kept with steamships and trains, couldn't we? Well, that would be bad. And coffee. So, it's a life where you get everywhere on a train. Oh, okay. I can have a maglev train, like a really fast.
Yeah, right. So
train.
bin off both. So we're gonna get rid of coffee and aeroplanes.
No. I know. I've gone the other way now. I want maglev trains everywhere that can get you across Europe in like 40 minutes.
Right, perfect.
Coffee served on the train. Perfect. What a next question. Thank you.
There you go. Well, wonderful. And he's actually asked one more question, which this is a really tough question. I've been thinking about this since I read it. If you could choose any book from history to be narrated by its original author, what would it be?
So you could hear their voice.
Yeah, so it'd be the author reading their own work.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, the Bible doesn't help us, does it? Well, it doesn't really, because we don't really know who it was. I suppose. I see that's kind of odd question, because I'm not, unless it's somebody like Dylan Thomas, who's I suppose particularly good at it. I'm not Sure. There's a reason why I think I narrated one of my novels as an audiobook, and then they just didn't ask me after that because I wasn't very good at it. I think there's a reason they get actors to do these things, because they tend to be better. I went to see Edwin Morgan, who's one of my favourite poets. He's a Scottish poet, a wonderful, beautiful, glorious poet. And I went to see him read, and he was very old. And he was reading all these kind of very sexy, kind of gay love poems that he'd written when he was 25, and he was 105. And, they were still genius, but it didn't add to the... Okay, well, then I suppose it would have to be... Oh, no. Do you know who it would be? Oh, God, one of those amazing Greek guys. Democritus, there we go. Because all his work was lost, wasn't it? Pretty much all of his work was lost in Alexandria, except, and we don't know, we know he wrote a lot, but we don't know what they said. And he was a complete genius in every way. So if Democritus could come back and read his books, then we would have his books. So that's my answer.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That is great. Well, that is it for the Twitter questions. Like I said, I'm very sorry if we didn't get around to yours. We had a lot of questions in, but maybe someday, if you ever come back on the podcast, we can cover some of those questions in the future. But yeah, I mean, it's great that there has been a lot of love, because we've had a lot of we've had a few writers on recently, and every single one, especially yourself, has had a lot of love. So it's cool to get the writers to get some credit from the fans, and get some love.
Yeah, it's really nice. Thank you, Josh. That's really fun to do.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And before we begin to wind down, we have a small matter to attend to, of the Corridor of Fame.
Have you ever been limited by who you were before?
One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back.
Our lives are different to anybody else's. That's the exciting part.
Sarah Jane? Do I have the right?
For some people, small, beautiful events is what life is all about.
In the nursery compared to us, 10 million years in absolute power. That's what it takes to be really
Every great decision creates ripples, like a huge boulder dropped in a lake.
But it was a childish dream that made you a doctor. You dreamt you could
No more.
I'm not just the title. I'm the last of the title. It just disappears, doesn't it? Everything you are gone in a moment, like breath on a mirror.
I do what I do because it's right. Because it's decent. And above all, it's kind.
Love abides in the face of everything.
So, the Corridor of Fame, for anybody listening at home that doesn't know, it's a Doctor Who Hall of Fame. We've got some wonderful names in there already. We've got companions and writers and directors and production designers, and we've got loads of people in there. It's getting a bit crowded in the corridor. We're building an extension to try and fit more people on, and we're going to add another person today. So Jenny, who would you like to add to the Corridor of Fame this week?
Well, I want Nissa on the Corridor of Fame, because I feel she was beautiful, she was clever, and she was almost completely ignored. Really, for vast amounts. And I understand that Tegan was a funny, kind of very sparky companion, almost a prototype, I would say, for a contemporary companion. And Nissa was much more of a holdover to kind of quiet, screamy, fainty companions. But I thought she was great, and I thought she was lovely. And I think if we were doing it these days, that I would that there's a lot of very interesting things you could do with a royal princess with an amazing amount of scientific knowledge, completely traumatized by the death of her father. I just think there's so many interesting things that you could do with Nissa that simply didn't occur to them at the time. Or that's just not how we did things. And also, you know, there was Turlough was there, who was very flashy, and Tegan, of course, was very funny, and Adric. Anyway, so I would, funnily enough, I think I wrote a little for Nissa in Gardens of the Dead, but I haven't written for her a lot. But I just thought she was great. I thought she was lovely and just a beautiful actor. I had quite a crush on her, and I would love to have seen her do more. Even like we were just talking about Kinda. What are they doing, Kinda? She just goes to sleep for 4 episodes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Sarah Sutton's wonderful. And I completely agree with everything you've said there. Because I mean, Sarah Sutton was one of the first people I saw at a convention doing a panel. It was her and Sylvester and Colin, and she was just a joy. But yeah, Nissa is a strange one, because you do feel like you're left wanting more when she does leave. And yeah, I think, like you said, that she had a lot more potential, which, as someone who's again diving into Big Finish for the first time, from what I've heard,
Big Finish,
she's you know, things that they work on her a lot more, which they tend to do with everyone on Big Finish. But yeah, it's a great pick. So was there anyone else that was thrown about, or was it a case that, because obviously I know that you love that era, and you know, we've spoken about Kinder and Peter Davison.
I loved her. Well, I loved Turlough too. I love that whole bit. And in fact, I think having a bad faith actor in the TARDIS is something that is interesting, and that they could conceivably have explored a little bit, particularly with Jodie's era, where they have had a very crowded TARDIS. You know, they have had a lot of people in that TARDIS, and I did think it was interesting that one of them is the mole, or one of them is what's the show my kids keep playing, where there's someone on a spaceship and you got to kill them, the murderer, and Among Us.
Among Us, yeah.
You know, and I just thought that was an interesting dynamic that always added a layer to almost any adventure you were watching. Is, well, which way is Turlough going to go? You know, are they going to keep torturing him? Is he going to keep, you know? It was a very dramatically, I think it was an interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's funny that you said, like, obviously, like, the current era, because that's a comparison that I see quite a lot, is that Yaz is very similar to Nissa in the way that she's got so much potential.
Yeah, they don't like it.
But it hasn't really been used yet. I mean, hopefully it will do.
Well,
in the next series.
Let us hope. I think we've had quite enough Brian.
Yeah.
I'm not Brian fans.
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, I mean, like you said, you know, a space princess, also something that is completely underutilized. You know, I love that era, but the Master is walking around with her dad's face.
Yeah,
that is
seriously.
There's a whole 4-parter in that.
Yeah.
It's not really mentioned, is it?
Never came up.
No, it's never touched upon.
I know, and then having so many of them, and they're so young, and this poor old, you know, Peter Davison's having to do his kind of whole supply teacher act. It's like, come on, children.
Yeah.
And I know, missed opportunity.
Yeah. Well, that's a great pick. That is a great pick. Was there anyone else? Because usually what happens is I get told the DVD collection I knew immediately, but the Corridor of Fame I could not pick. So the people just end up choosing on the day, I think. Was there anyone else that was in the running for?
Well, in terms of, you know, kind of people I liked very much, then that was it. I think it's interesting when Russell drew his companions. He drew all the companions one day, I don't know why, and he included the girl with the ponytail. Sorry, with the two little bunches from the end of the first series. Oh, come on, with the TV station. You know the one I'm talking about.
Oh, Linda.
Linda with a Y.
Linda with a Y. Yeah.
He includes Linda with a Y. I love it when kind of people come on with very short. So Linda with a Y, and I guess Sally from Blink. Became a major Oscar-winning movie star. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Carey Mulligan. Yeah.
Carey Mulligan's character, Sally something. Sally Sparrow. There we go. So yes. I think Sally Sparrow and Linda with a Y. I love people who have very small roles and make them indelibly good.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to the little almost. And in fact, now who's the other one in that? Do you know the first time I saw it, I didn't like it, and the second time I saw it was a masterpiece. The Christmas edition with Santa Claus in it.
Last Christmas.
Christmas. The first time I saw it, I was cross at it anyway because my children were still quite young, and I had a sense that it was very clearly saying that there's no such thing as Santa Claus, which wasn't helpful to me with my children on Christmas Day. And then the second time I saw it, I thought it was great. And there's that terrific character in that, and she's got the list of all the things she wants to do with her life.
I know exactly who you mean. Shona, I believe her name is.
Oh, well remembered.
Yeah.
Well, I genuinely thought she might come back. Actually, I thought she was cracking.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was talking to someone about this the other day. She was originally written as the new
of course,
companion.
Because Thingy was leaving, wasn't she?
Yeah, Jenny Colgan was going to leave.
That's right.
So Shona was originally planned. So a lot of Series 9 was written with Shona. And then Jenna decided to stay, so they had to rewrite a lot of the stories and
that
the finale. Yeah, I hope they bring her back at some point.
Oh no, they won't. But I hope her career does all right. That is harsh.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Ooh, now we're going to have a bummer.
And I think a lot of what they did with her went into what they were going to plan with her went into Bill eventually.
Oh, Bill, I liked a lot.
I love Bill.
I thought she was fantastic. You could really. She was just. I mean, the character was good, but as an actress, she was fantastic. She was great. She just. For me, she lit up the stage. I thought she was absolutely great, and I thought she was I think she's my. Yeah, she was a terrific foil for Peter as well. Oh yeah, I miss Bill. Oh, and God, how they treated her. Jesus.
Yeah, it was a rough ending. Definitely a rough ending.
Oh, it's oh my God, that whole I find that actually it doesn't really come up in the rewatch because I find it so upsetting. It's a really upsetting couple of episodes, and I understand that they want. I don't think this fun of the two masters in any way offsets the misery of the
Yeah, it's a tough watch. It's definitely a tough watch.
It's so gloomy and so sad and it's terrible.
Yeah, well, hopefully, I mean, around about the time that this episode's coming out, I know that there's a friend of the show and Doctor Who YouTuber, George Shared Ace Creeper, who previously did a black and white edition of. He did a full recut and black and white version of World Enough and Time. And he's now he's recut all of World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls into an hour and a half long film that's in black and white. And I've seen some clips from it, and it looks absolutely beautiful.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he's done it all pretty much in his spare time, and. Yeah, I believe he's even changed. He's created an entire new ending from the different footage. I don't even know how he's done it. He's incredible. But everybody go and check that out.
Right. Well, I'm absolutely already looking forward to that then.
Yes. Well, I'll send it your way when it's out. I'll send it your way so you don't miss it. But yeah, I mean we're coming to the end of the show now. And it's been an absolute pleasure. But one thing that I wanted to cover first is something that I always ask my guests. It's always my final question. The question is, in a sentence, what does Doctor Who mean to you?
Goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, give me some help here. What have other people said? Have they all burst into tears?
Well, I'm usually the one bursting into tears at the end. I usually get a bit weepy, but that's just because I'm a big nerd. We get a big variation really. People, Rob Shim again. I'm linking it back to this, but he gave an absolutely beautiful answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he said that it's like it's like a family member, and he finds comfort in the fact that Doctor Who was there before him and will be there after him. And yeah, I mean, we've had some great answers, but it's down to you really. I mean, it's what it feels like to you, because I think everyone has different ways of seeing this daft little program in their heads.
I think particularly from meeting other people that are involved with it, and other people, it's the only industry I've ever been in where people are mad passionate about it before they even try and get a job in it, on every single level. And I think what's really is this real sense that if you were a bookish child, if you were a nerd, if you were kind of clever but you weren't very good at fighting, then it was a place for you, that this was the hero, that didn't fight, that quite often just ran away. I think was extremely important. And I think one of the reasons why, although I am pro having a female doctor, I have sons, and I like having a role model for them who doesn't fight and who uses their brains to get out of difficult situations. I think from that perspective, and I think I've always found it very moving how many young gay people grew up with Who, because it was the only show they had where at the end of the show the hero and the heroine weren't expected to kiss, which can almost feel like something that we're losing or gaining or comes and goes. So the idea that it was inclusive before we even really knew what inclusive means, particularly in the 70s, I think is one of the things that makes it important. And also as a portrayal of masculinity, even if to have someone like that, they literally, because the patriarchy is so toxic, they literally have to come from another galaxy. But nonetheless, regardless of what galaxy they come from, they're there. And I think that means a lot to a lot of people for decades.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. I was one of those kids. I was one of those, not that I'm not manly. I've never been manly. And though I'm straight, I've always been a bit camp, and never been one for fighting in cars and Top Gear and all that rubbish. But yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Doctor Who was a place for me growing up. So yeah, that it's a lovely answer. It's another one, another great answer to that. And a great chat. Like I said, it's been wonderful to have you here. Before we go, I mean, where can people find you? Obviously, people can go out and get your books, and I strongly recommend the Christmas Invasion Target novelisation. You can get it wherever. I think it's all over the place. It's definitely on Amazon, although Amazon is also dreadful. But where can people find you?
Oh, well, you can find me on Twitter, or in the best place to find me when it's me is Twitter, really. Mm-hmm. And hopefully anywhere else where you find me on Facebook or Instagram, there will be a very polite message, but it might. Yeah. Twitter's the best chance of it actually be me saying hello.
Yeah, and it's at Jenny Colgan, is that right? Yeah. Okay, at Jenny Colgan. And yeah, in terms of the podcast, you can find us on Twitter as well at whoknewdwpod, and Instagram whoknewdwpod. and you can email us, whoknewdwpod@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Ryan Carr. We've got episodes every Monday, and we've got episodes of the spin-off podcast, the Collector's Edition, dropping roughly fortnightly, whenever we can get our act together. And you can subscribe on YouTube, subscribe, like, share, whatever you can do. It really, really helps the podcast out. But once again, thank you, Jenny, for coming on. It's been great. I've had a great time with this one. So yeah, bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.
Brilliant. Cheers, Josh. Bye now.
Thanks for listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts and now on YouTube. Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you can, as it really helps us out. And a massive thanks to the Sononauts for lending their cover of the Doctor Who theme to be the theme for the podcast.